What's it like working for a guy like Johnny Depp? Because everybody talks about him. I mean, I've met him a few times thanks to you. What's he like? Like, for those that don't know.
A sweet, lovable man. Kind, compassionate, friendly. I've never seen him angry. There.
He seems like he maintains his composure very well under pressure, obviously, as we've all seen. I mean,
think about what happened to his life. I mean, he went from this guy, he hung out with Nicolas Cage, said, you should come with me to auditions, you'll probably get some work, while he was trying to be in a band. And that's how it started. Nicolas Cage took him to auditions, but he always wanted to be in a rock band, and now he can be.
Hello, welcome to another episode of 2020. My name is Cory here, as always, with Siobhán and Ben, and we are super pumped to welcome back our British ambassador, Mr. Steve Wood.
Back for even more stories that I didn't know that he would have had, because he already had so many episodes with us full of everything you wanted to hear. So it was really great to jump in and hear what's going on in the world of touring, Hollywood vampires, all sorts of craziness in his world.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that he tells stories that he's like a comedian where you want to ask him, like, do that bit. And I coaxed him into talking about the Beatles, and I thought he was going to regurgitate a story about George Harrison. No, just continues on telling me a bunch of things I don't know.
His other Beatles stories.
Yeah. So he's just the coolest dude ever. And by the way, did I mention he manages Johnny Depp? So...
Yeah, so we get into that in this episode. Without giving too much away, let's jump in part 1 with Steve Wood right now. Like and subscribe at 2020-d.com.
Do it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Goodman. I'm just going to drive right into the craziness, the MK Ultra, the peak of this trip, because you can't slow the man we're about to talk to down. You just can't. He's an endless bombast of machismo, bravado, interesting stories. Actually might be the most interesting guy on the planet. He manages a little known guy named Johnny Depp. He knows this dude and happens to also manage him as an artist manager. This guy, Joe Perry from Aerosmith, a little known band called Godsmack, on top of the incredulous amounts of people that he just knows because he's friends with them. One of my favorite people on the damn planet. Didn't even introduce my cohorts because I was so excited. Siobhán and Cory. Steve Wood, the artist manager, the guy from Shelter Music, the dude who does everything with a beautiful, beautiful accent nonetheless. Steve, how are you?
Well, I'm speechless after that introduction. Whatever you're taking, I want some of that.
You could be speechless because Ben has enough speech for everyone.
Absolutely. It's been a while since I've heard one of those epic introductions. So, wow, Ben, I'm impressed.
You know what? Like, I felt like I was in neutral for a while in my life, but then I realized we had to have Steve Wood back, and I've just been excited.
Well, I just hope I live up to that introduction. My God. Oh, boy. Well, guys, it's so good to see you all again.
Yeah, you too, man.
Here we are.
Yeah, we figured out. It's time we check back in because, it's been, I think, almost a year, pretty close to it. It was the end of 2021, really? I think, the last time we had you on. So I'm sure a lot has happened in the past year that we need to catch up with.
Well, I got rid of the beard. That happened. I had a COVID beard. I'd never did it before. I just wanted to see if I could do it. And yes, it did make me look older. So I got rid of that.
I think a lot of people went through that phase, so you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Well, can you fill us in on what's been happening with you in the last year? Not to interrupt you, but what's new with you?
Yeah, well, for the longest time, it was extremely quiet, dull, nothing really happening. And we were booking tours and canceling them, rebooking them. And that's just the way it went for like 2 years. And so finally, COVID has, dissipated. It's gone into the background. Although I'm hearing that that's starting to come back. I don't know if you guys are hearing that, but I was talking to one of my travel agents today, and he's got 8 tours that are out, and most of them are having COVID problems because they're in buses. Mm-hmm. You're in a tube, one guy gets it, boom. You know,
well, I mean, I've been hearing. Well, my friend Kamal, who I know you know Kamal, our mutual friend Kamal, is now with Weird Al Yankovic, and they had to go through all this crazy stuff. And the guy that got sick was Weird Al, so he actually had to stay in the parking lot on his bus, quarantined, while they were at like the Four Seasons, his entire staff. And my buddy was like, "This is just so insane." And you know, they have meet and greets and all that sort of stuff, and it's very scary for people. And the other thing is, it's also a logistical nightmare because gas is more expensive. Even if you're flying, I know during COVID, a lot of these pilots retired, and you can't just get pilots out of nowhere to drive these jumbo jets and fly them all over the world. Like Bruce Dickinson is on tour with Iron Maiden. He's not available for JetBlue. So when you want to get back from Atlanta, you don't have as many choices anymore, even if you're Joe Perry, because Johnny Smith, who's been flying for 40 years, is like, nah, I'm out. Or flying private for our friends, because that's where the money's at. And all those guys are just as scared of COVID as the pilots probably are. Is that accurate?
Absolutely right. Yeah, and look, I'm going to tell you a story about this in a minute with involving the band Seether.
Please do. Seether.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Oh, good. We were just on the road with them. I can't wait to hear that. But go on.
We're friends with those guys. We just talked to them.
Well, but just so you know, I mean, I was looking at Heathrow the other day. It's a nightmare in Heathrow. Have you seen the pictures with the baggage? It's out of control. They're running out of space because the bags keep piling up because something's wrong with the baggage control. It looks unbelievable if you ever get to see it. Then they're canceling flights left, right, and center in Europe because they don't have enough pilots. It's happening here too. And in the music business, you cannot get buses, trucks, sound crew, lighting crew, and drivers. I mean,
yes, I can attest to that.
It's crazy. The drivers all lost their jobs when COVID, and so they took delivery jobs because they got, paid to drive those big rigs, and boom, you couldn't get they could not get drivers. So here's this Seether story, and it's really good. They're managed at Shelter, which I'm part of. And Brian Frank, their manager, called me and said, look, would you help put the tour together? And I said, yeah, sure, happy to. So it took a while to get buses. I was saying, wow, this is difficult. And I'm going through all my lists. Finally, I found the bus. All good, great. Got the bus. Now, for the first month of this tour, I have a new album. And they're doing Weekend Warrior stuff, right? So hubbing out of Nashville. They do Monday through Thursday touring, go back to Nashville, all go home, come back Monday, pick up the bus. They have a trailer full of merch. On the 4th weekend, the bus drops at Nashville, band crew go away. The driver somehow got really confused and thought that was the end. He unhooked the trailer, swear to God, and drove to the Jonas Brothers. But 2 days later, the bus yard where the trailer was called me and said, hey, are you guys coming to pick up your trailer? I go, what do you mean, pick up the trailer? We'll be there in 3 days to start the tour with 3 doors down with Seether. He goes, well, there's no bus here. Make some calls. They realized this horrendous mistake had happened. Now, you got to understand, it's the beginning of a cycle. They're on their second radio single. Both went to #1, I believe. And I could not find a bus. And I was terrified that I would have to go into Shelter and say, hey, guys, I know you got a new album and you got 2 #1s and you're about to start the tour, but I'm afraid you have to cancel it because we can't get a bus. I mean, this is huge. And I was terrified. I'd have to go in, explain this. And I was up like 3 nights. Like, I was physically ill over this because literally, if you can't get a bus, you can't tour. Finally, the planets aligned. I got the bus. And I'm thinking, thank God. Then the owner said, but I don't have a driver. I go, oh no, we're back to square one. I went everywhere I could, tried everything. I found a driver. Now he realized my predicament. So he goes, well, I'm going to gouge this guy 300% over the rate for bus drivers, 300%. What am I going to say? I said, yes. So that night, I thought, thank God, I'm going to bed. I'm getting a good night's sleep. It's over. I woke up. There was a text. Hey, dude, I took another gig. Good luck. And I just looked at this thing. And anyway, within about a couple of hours, the planets aligned again, and I found a driver. And the driver was one of the backline crew for my son's band, Like a Storm, who had a license and he could drive. And the tour carried on. But I'm telling you, that was the craziest. I've never seen that before.
That sounds like a mixture of who's on. That sounds like a mixture of Who's On First and Spinal Tap. Like, if that's not like, if there's I know they're making a new Spinal Tap. If there isn't new material to take from, like, oh my God, Steve.
Oh,
like,
the bus driver debacle is well known. I think a lot of people
bus
are suffering
driver
from this.
Debacle? Is that the name of a new band?
It could be. No, but even for us, that's the running joke is who is the best paid person on a tour? It's the bus driver. Like, more than all the musicians, because there's such a premium on it. It's so hard to find them. And then you get some people that, they can drive a big vehicle, but they don't know how to drive a passenger bus of people that are sleeping in a way that makes you feel like you're not going to die every night. It's definitely a skill set that's hard to find right now.
Star coach drivers, they have a whole different skill set to drive the rock star. I mean, the sort of the guy that has his own star coach and everything. You have to treat them very differently. There's a different skill set. Crew drivers, it's pretty black and white. You drop, you leave, you go to sleep, you come back, you're done. It's different if you're driving, let's say, Joe Perry. He has different needs. Come to think of it, he travels by private jet, so that probably wasn't a good idea. but you get it. Yeah, you get it. But the whole business is nuts right now. And when Aerosmith were doing the Vegas residency, and Steven Tyler pulled out, just about everybody that was on the road crew who had premium positions, front of house, monitors, lighting designers, immediately moved on to another tour. I have friends in this business, obviously. They're turning things down every day. It's kind of nuts. It's kind of nuts. And Godsmack, I got to tell you, Sully said, I'm not going to tour in 22 because everybody is. And he said, we're going to tour in 23. And now I got to hand it to him. He was right, because it's tough touring. And there's only enough dollars to go around. You can't go to everything. And everything's out on tour. So...
Yeah. So what you're saying is if you ever wanted to be in the industry, learn to drive a bus or learn to be on the crew and start. Now's the time to break in, right?
Absolutely. And I will tell you this. I don't know if you look on social media for these festivals in Europe. I mean, huge numbers. Mm-hmm. Huge numbers. Have you been seeing any of it?
I've seen some pictures, videos.
Green Day, the Eagles in Hyde Park. Glastonbury, Hellfest in France, massive. It's almost like I could see the curvature of the earth in the back.
There was a clip that the drummer from Korn posted. I saw on Instagram, and the crowd. So the crowd was so big that you could see the delay from the kick drum because everyone was doing this to the sound. So every time the kick drum hit, you saw a wave go from the front to the back. You could see the speed of sound in people's headbanging. It was insane.
Wow.
I saw Steel Panther last night. They had thousands of people doing this, to Weenie Ride was the name of the song. Do you know the song?
Yes.
Weenie,
Oh,
Weenie,
yeah,
Weenie,
of course.
I mean, there must have been 60,000 people doing that. And it's huge in Europe. But what isn't like huge right now is bands doing 5 shows a week. Those numbers are slightly down, actually. Festivals, because there's a smorgasbord of activity and there's something for everybody. Big. People want to come and be entertained. But, doing your own shows 5 days a week, that's not doing blowout numbers yet, But it'll get there. I hope so, because we just put the Hollywood Vampires on sale. And for next year, it's doing well.
Yeah, well, hold on. Can we just stop for a moment? Because in the Hollywood Vampires, you have 3, like as we say in Hebrew, shalosh regalim, which means the 3 legs, like the biggest holidays, except the holiday is Alice Cooper, Johnny Depp, and Joe Perry. And each one of them by themselves. I saw that. Tommy has been elevated. He's been promoted from the Alice Cooper band to an official vampire. Is that the deal?
Correct.
And he's a great guitarist. But here's the thing. Johnny Depp, like, if he was to go into a magazine and say something, let's say, quote John Lennon and say, "I'm bigger than Jesus," he might not be wrong. So I feel like anything that you might say that would apply to any other band for 5 days a week does not exist for Captain Jack Sparrow / At Night plays with Jeff Beck. Am I right here? Now?
Yeah.
In this day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have you, I don't know if you know, I was reading that people are coming to Johnny with roles now, movies. I mean, he's coming back. And big
I have
time.
no doubt. Yeah.
He's on tour with Jeff Beck. Did you hear any of the songs? The one about Hedy Lamarr? I really liked it.
He's got a really cool voice that, like, when I saw him live a few times, but he's got like that quiet kind of crooner thing going for him that, like, unless you really listen with good headphones on, like, it's kind of hard, but like he really has this interesting voice that I can understand why Jeff Beck would go, I could do something with this. It's so unique, and it's not what I expected out of him, but I guess considering he was a musician before he was even an actor, it makes sense that he hangs out with Joe Perry and Clapton and Jimmy Page and everybody else and Paul McCartney and Dave Grohl, whatever. You'd expect this guy might be good at this point, and it seems like he's finally reached that level, especially as a vocalist, because as a guitar player, he's good. Like, I've heard him play, but his singing is so unique. Is that going to be the next iteration of the Vampires, you think? Like, more Johnny singing?
Correct. And also, look at the publicity Jeff Beck's getting out of it. Think about it.
Well, it's the biggest he's ever been.
That's right. And we went up on sale during all of that. Didn't hurt at all. Exciting. I'm actually hearing that Disney are coming around to Captain Jack Sparrow again. Have you heard this?
I heard that they were even coming around about it before he was even acquitted because it was such a big deal. I mean, look, they say
PR is PR.
All press is good press, but Johnny Depp did exactly what Dennis Leary used to say. You do drugs once, then you come out and you say, "I'm sorry." And then everyone's like, "You're the fucking greatest," and put you on the cover of People. And that's not exactly it. But he goes up there and he says, he's so earnest. He's like, "Yeah, maybe I was a little drunk. I don't even remember what roles I'm in." And he's just enjoyable as a human being. It doesn't even matter. Now everyone's so bought into Johnny Depp, he can do anything. Because now that you realize he's not this giant monster, and he's certainly no more monster than that monster he was married to, now we can like him again. Which I liked him the whole time, but now we can like him again, and now he's the biggest ever. So if he was suing for $55 million, I bet you Oprah will invite him on for fucking $55 million just to to talk about what it's like for a man to be abused.
His life's going to change, and for much better ways. No, he's in a good place right now. He's in a good place. And you got to think, if you were him, I mean, my God, he wanted to be in a rock band and a rock star, and it all came true for him. You know, he calls acting his day job, by the way.
Well, you know what? He's so talented that he might be able to make that his day job. Because if he does this thing, well, first off, Jeff Beck, let's talk about him, because Jeff Beck is notoriously the greatest guitarist that didn't get the acclaim that Clapton or Santana or all these other guitar players that just are not as good. I'll say it. They aren't as good as Jeff Beck. But Jeff Beck is so like highbrow that like a lot of the people that like listen to I Shot the Sheriff could not understand what he was doing with the whammy bar. But now that he's friends with, Johnny Depp, who acknowledges that Jeff Beck is the greatest, he shows back up in England for the first time, like in a public appearance, where on stage with Jeff Beck, and I guarantee you more Zennials, Millennials, Generation, Z2 or whatever the hell they are on now, Googled Jeff Beck. They're like the greatest guitarist that nobody cared about. And like, we're going to care about him now. Thanks, Johnny. And that's where we're at. Jeff Beck's going to be replacing Eric Clapton, since Eric Clapton's a racist and doesn't deny science. We're opening up the door for Jeff Beck and Johnny Depp. Rant over.
Sure. Well, he was on a Friday. He was in court getting acquitted, as it were. And on Sunday, he was in Sheffield, England, on stage with Jeff Beck. I mean, of course, when he walked on, huge.
Not a bad week.
Yeah, and it just gets better and better and better. And then we announced the vampires in the middle of all that, It's exciting. We're doing the O2 in London, which is the 18,000 seater. Exciting.
Well,
incredible.
That's great.
Are you excited that, because I know you're a British guy that plays guitar, that you now have an excuse to talk to Jeff Beck?
Oh, I don't know about that. Well, of course, I'd like to. Maybe. I don't think I'll be jamming with him anytime soon. But
you won't if you have that mindset, Steve.
No, but listen. Have you? I mean, this is. I didn't mean this to be a Jeff Beck conversation, but I send you clips of him playing things, Benny, that just, I don't know, I throw out I don't get it. How can you be that good? I don't know, I'm speechless.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible. And of course, it's Jeff Beck's year, because who's he playing with when he's not with Johnny Depp now? He's playing on Ozzy Osbourne's new song, Patient Number 9. Is that not with Robert Trujillo from Metallica and Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So Jeff Beck has gone from being Eric Clapton's like fill-in to now playing with JD. We can just call him JD at this point, and Ozzy, because we don't even need an Osbourne. So I guess it is Jeff's year. That's my end of my rant, because I love Jeff Beck and I'm glad he finally got to do it. But most importantly, your client Johnny Depp finally reached his dream, which is to be a rock star.
He said, Jeff Beck, that the album, which is out soon, it's called 18. And the reason it's called 18 is when he got with Johnny and they were like trading musical ideas, he said they both felt like kids again, like they were 18 years old. And that's why they called the album 18.
That's
and
cool.
It's full of covers. There's a Beach Boy
it's beautiful.
Song. Caroline No, which is a Beach Boy track by Brian Wilson. That's on there. But the way he interprets Jeff Beck, I mean, like People Get Ready, it's one of my favorite guitar solos. I don't know if you know the track, People Get Ready?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
Oh, my God. But
I mean, listen, I can go on and on about Jeff Beck, but that said, let me ask you this. What's it like working for a guy like Johnny Depp? Because everybody talks about him. I mean, I've met him a few times thanks to you. What's he like? Like, for those that don't know.
A sweet, lovable man. Kind, compassionate, friendly. I've never seen him angry. there.
He seems like he maintains his composure very well under pressure, obviously, as we've all seen. I mean,
think about what happened to his life. I mean, he went from this guy. I mean, he hung out with Nicolas Cage, said, well, you should come with me to auditions. You'll probably get some work, while he was trying to be in a band. And that's how it started. Nicolas Cage took him to auditions, but he always wanted to be in a rock band. And now he can be. His house is full of guitars, by the way, all hanging around he has a recording studio.
You know what? But he should listen to his friend Nick Cage, because I'll tell you something Nick Cage has that I bet you Johnny doesn't. A Tyrannosaurus Rex skull.
Yeah,
did you know
a bunch
that?
of really expensive comics. Yeah, I think he collects comics. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but yes, he does have that skull. I know about that.
Well, he won it from Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, I put in a bid, but I didn't win. I was a little annoyed. Leo and clearly Nick Cage outbid me. It was upsetting.
Well, I just watched the new Nicolas Cage movie. It's really funny. Do you know the one I mean? Where he's
Was it where he plays himself?
He plays himself, right?
Yeah, right?
Yes, he's playing himself. He's a drug dealing, this drug dealer, very rich drug dealer, hires Nicolas Cage to come to his daughter's birthday party, and it's so funny. I can't remember the name of it.
Is it the unbearable weight of massive talent?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a Spinal Tap movie.
Recommend it. Very funny. Nicolas Cage, funny.
Can I tell? I'm gonna also make a recommendation as far as movies. Especially because it's such an allegory for what's going on right now. But Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. Because Mike Judge. It's an actual movie. So listen, I'm going to tell you
that advertised. I think it's on streaming.
It's on
Paramount.
Paramount Plus. Listen, Mike Judge wrote Idiocracy, okay? Which, by the way, it's the closest thing. Well, and he did King of the Hill, and Beavis and Butthead have always been a sign of what people are actually like. So I remember reading a review from Rolling Stone from back in the day of Beavis and Butthead trying to understand that it's not the stupidest thing ever. I feel like Beavis and Butthead was the lowest common denominator before South Park, and that they were making statements about being so stupid that people didn't realize how stupid it was. Now, if you go and watch this new movie, the amount of consistency in stupidity and lack of syntax, like just a comma, could change the whole movie. For Beavis and Butthead. And I gotta tell you, it's in a world where there's so many politics and so much weird shit going on outside and everyone's so woke, watching Beavis and Butthead for 90 minutes basically try to have sex with a woman and going through space and time was worth all 90 minutes. So I can recommend that no higher.
I think Beavis and Butthead probably destroyed Winger's career. Actually.
They did.
Yeah.
They did, because they had the dumb guy, whatever his name was, the dumb kid wearing the Winger shirt. So they had AC/DC and Metallica. No one even cared about Winger, but because Nelson or whatever his name was wearing the damn shirt, Kip Winger is now never taken seriously.
Yeah. Also, there are pictures in Metallica's rehearsal studio of Winger's face on a dartboard.
Correct.
Speaking of Metallica, I just watched also the documentary on Netflix that maybe you've all seen it. It's a 2-part thing. The first episode is like 2.5 hours about them working on the San Anger album, I think.
No.
Some kind of monster.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh,
it's interesting.
Terrible people,
right?
Huh?
It's quite old, right? Some kind of.
It might be. It might be. I just found it the other day.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. In fact,
unlikable.
It was an interesting perspective in their personalities for sure. Because as someone that didn't listen to Metallica growing up, it was interesting to see what was going on between all their interpersonal dynamics. You know,
I was in a way involved in part of that movie because I remember it was shot a long time ago, actually, and I was working with Megadeth at the time. And I got a phone call from their life coach. He's in the movie.
Yes, he's a big part of the movie, yeah.
He actually came from an NFL team, I believe. He was the life coach for a sports team. Don't remember which one. And he called me up saying, look, we're doing this movie and we'd like to interview Dave Mustaine about like not being in Metallica. I mean, because that famous story, everybody's kind of heard it.
Right. He had a cameo appearance in it, yeah.
And yeah. So, they came to where we were, and I took Dave to a hotel, and they filmed that whole sequence there. And that was like the first time I think Dave had sat there with them since that happened. It was, so it was a big deal. In fact, he got quite emotional about it.
Yeah.
Look, if you think about it, he's like the metal version of Pete Best, who was in
from the Beatles.
Beatles before Ringo. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it must affect you.
Well, I mean, but the question is, should I show up to Metallica show saying Mustaine was the best? Because that's what they used to do at the Beatles shows, which is another reason why they didn't want Pete, was because the girls all thought he was the dreamboat. So how is Paul and George supposed to get any chicks when you got Bestie back there trying to win over all the girls? And he wasn't as funny, which is why they got Ringo, because Ringo had all his Ringoisms. Like, he worked an 8-day week.
Yeah,
it's a hard day's night.
I think Pete Best's mother had a club or something that anyway, it was helpful to the Beatles. But in
Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah, there was something about a club there, but yes, he was the guy that was most popular, and I think that didn't help him later on in life. But actually, when I think back, I feel so blessed to have actually worked with 3 of the Beatles. To me, it's still.
Most people haven't even met one, so that's a pretty big statement to make.
You told us a story about George, but where do the other Beatles come in? Because
I'll tell you. I was working with Dave Edmunds, incredible guitar player from England, produced all the Stray Cats records and lots of others. And he was a neighbor of George Harrison, who lived in that Friar Park. It was a monastery that he bought. Some sort of $40 million, like huge mansion. And he was friends with Dave. And Dave called me up one day. He said, hey, you want to go for dinner at George's? Well, I knew who he meant. It was like, no, I'm going to be busy watching TV. Yeah, I want to go. Right. And we go. And Dave, had a big gold Rolls Royce in those days. And we went there. And a conversation started about Carl Perkins. Now, you heard of him, right?
Great drummer.
Carl Perkins. Carl was going to have a documentary made about him, and he wanted a band around him, and then they'd play all of his songs. And so during the course of this meeting, the band was put together, and the band was made up of George Harrison, Ringo Starr, Eric Clapton, the Stray Cats, who's the guitar player? Earl Slick was in it, and all of Dave Edmunds' band. And so I was asked to run all the production for this show, which was going to be filmed. And we would go to rehearsals, and the UK press got hold of this because there's 2 of the Beatles, first time this had happened since they broke up. And we did the show, and it was incredible. And there I was, Ringo, Paul, Eric, unbelievable. I'll never forget it. I mean, crazy.
That's wild. Well, so
crazy.
Let me ask you this. What's it like being in a room with all those guys playing? You have Ringo Starr back there. There's George Harrison, Eric, and I mean, nevertheless, what's Brian Setzer doing in the room?
Well, he was there because he played that type of music from the 50s. I mean, that's what, the rockabilly.
So was he talking to George Harrison going, let me show you how to rock around the clock? I mean, that's a weird pair.
Everybody was having fun. It was really normal. It was just everybody were chatting. And the same when I worked with Paul McCartney. I mean, to me, when I walked into Air Studios, it's still, you can't get your head around it when you see him in person. I mean, that's a Beatle. It blows me away. And I watched him recording the session, and he was very kind. He listened.
You watched
to
him standing there?
Yeah, he was coordinating the session. I was
through the window.
And no, in the room. I was right in the room.
That was all my Beatles references in one sentence, Steve. I watched him standing there.
Yeah. And he listened to what the other people had to say, but then they're going to do it his way. I mean,
I was wondering how that ended.
So kind of like Get Back, the whole movie.
Exactly.
And I don't know if I ever told this last time, and true story, Linda McCartney was there. And she was wonderful. And she was asking everybody, can I get you some tea, with some coffee, some biscuits? And she was absolutely super. And we were all sitting there, and she told this joke. And like, we all could not believe she said this. And she said, true story, hey guys, what do you call a dog with wings? Linda McCartney. Swear to God, she told that joke. I couldn't believe it.
Well, the self-awareness is incredible.
Well, because she was going through a lot of, like, people were slagging her off because, she was Paul's wife. That's why she was there. And, she wasn't a musician, but she took it like a trooper. I mean, just telling that joke to us was never forgotten it.
Well, the thing is, if you didn't laugh at the joke, she could have had you killed out back. So.
Probably.
I laughed, but nervously. A nervous laugh. But yeah, and George Martin was there,
Well, isn't he Sir George Martin? Well, Mr. Sir
He
Dead
wasn't
George
there.
Martin. Yeah. Oh,
He wasn't there.
Fair enough.
Wondered, do you think he got any additional income from producing the Beatles? Because let's be honest, he was the fifth Beatle. I mean, he created so much of what they were trying to do. Do you think he just got paid a producer's fee from EMI?
That would be horrifying.
Yeah, I would assume that he would have some sort of stake in the publishing and whatnot.
And
It'd be very bad business if he didn't.
He was able to ride that so hard. I mean, just his artwork and all the stuff. Like, I mean, he must have been able to ride that his entire life. I mean,
but he did not get publishing. He's not. His name is not on any of it.
Oh, it's not.
All right, I'm googling his net worth because I'm curious. George Martin.
Because everything on the internet is true.
Yeah.
He's no longer here. His son's like taken over.
Well,
Giles.
listen, at the time of his death, he was worth $100 million. So he must have had some stake in it.
Yeah, maybe he was one of the owners of Abbey Road Studios. I don't know. But I mean, literally, let's be honest, he helped craft many of those songs to what they are today, like In My Life and Yesterday. He wrote the parts. He wrote the orchestration, so I've often wondered about that. So if I ever meet Giles Martin, I'm going to ask him. I went for Love a few months ago in Las Vegas. You guys seen it?
Seen what?
Oh, Love, the Beatles. Is it Cirque du Soleil or something?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I have not.
I have not.
There's, I have to tell you, I've seen it like 3 times. And at the very end, all these songs are being played, and they're all magnificent. 4 massive posters unfurl of each Beatle. They come down. And I actually had moist eyes because I realized this is never going to happen again. That's never going to be repeated.
That's what they're saying in the lab when they're creating the holograms of everybody everyone's been saying this is never going to happen again until now.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. I mean, it was to me emotional. And
I can believe
it's
that.
not going to happen again. Look at music today. It's not going to happen again.
By the way, interesting fact. I just want to bring it back to George Martin. I looked it up. he was getting paid only £3,000 a year, and then got annoyed when he generated millions and millions of pounds for EMI. And then he was the first one to cut a deal where he gets part of the revenue. So he actually cut that deal, and I guess he created the landscape for future producers to take points.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
He invented the model,
right?
Yeah,
but even now, it's interesting. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it. I just said I often thought about that.
Yeah. Well, even now I was going to say it's interesting, like observing different artists and working with people, how many people play a part in the creation of a song too, and how even that gets split up. Determining what level of ownership do you have over something if you're just in the room, and you throw out an idea or a hook, or you play a diddly on the piano and all of a sudden that builds the entire song. It's interesting.
Look, you're in a band like Starset. I mean, I often wonder how, like, there'll be a main writer, but the drummer plays his parts, the bass player's playing his parts. At what point do you have some ownership, and at what point do you not? It's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, in our case, Dustin, the singer, is the primary writer, and he works with other people, producers, and
he controls it all, Steve. He controls it all. He doesn't even let them play on the record.
Show, right?
But listen how brilliant this is. He's friends with everyone in the band. They're all capable, because he wanted to answer your question, which is no control, Steve. Instead, he hires session musicians and then brings it to the band and says, play this. So that, therefore, they can't say anything that they've improvised any of their stuff. They're actually covering themselves.
Is that the way it goes?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, all of us, we're in the band and we perform. But yeah, the songs are all basically entirely written by him and his team of people that he works with.
And just so you know how brilliant he is, Ron, their bass player, not only is a genius at logistics and operations, but can also fix a bus.
Really?
I'm serious. Yeah, that's why he's their bass player. I mean, he speaks multiple languages. He can book tours. He books the tours for you, doesn't he?
He helps. I mean, Ron's very involved in the logistics. I mean, Starset is probably not your typical band model. It really is a business in a lot of ways. Dustin is the primary creative director.
It's brilliant.
But yeah, when it comes, it's interesting talking about the buses and logistics, because Starset, we own the buses that we use, so finding drivers is one thing. But luckily, we're not at the helm of having to rent from somebody. Those are in the stock,
Brilliant.
So we have that in the capital stock available, however they decide to do it. But yeah, they were really ahead of the game with.
Is Starset one guy or with employees, or how does that work, actually?
I mean, it's a good question. I guess it depends on how you define it. I mean, we're all part of the brand of the band, and I don't want to speak for them, but when it comes to the writing of the music and the direction of where things are going or what's coming next, I don't really have any control of that. So a little bit of both, I suppose.
Yeah. It's really cool because he's a visionary. It seems like, from an outside perspective, that definitely masterminds everything, but he makes it integral in the sense that everybody in the band has their own story. They're all woven into this fabric. So even though Siobhán may not be playing on the record, people know who she is because the way he brands the band. Every single character, every single member of the band is a character in this story. So
really, it's a universe.
Them.
Yeah, so it's not really a band or versus
Star
one person.
Wars.
It's a
Ghostbusters.
universe. Yeah, exactly. It's an overarching thing that encompasses many things,
Jurassic
including the band,
Park.
including the story, including the music, and every person has a place in that. But your level of involvement and the outfits,
and the outfits as well. And did he design all those?
They weren't custom designed, but the idea was, that was their idea. But they found what matched the aesthetic of the where the vision was going.
I was meaning to ask you, now you're on tour. What's it like? Are you enjoying festival touring?
Yeah, well, we haven't been doing a lot of festivals. This is so interesting. You were talking about 5 nights a week. That's kind of what we're doing right now. We're on a headline tour. So we had done one, post-COVID. We did a small acoustic tour in summer of 2021. We did another headline tour in the winter, which is, I think, when we last spoke to you. And it wasn't really selling as well as it is now. So I think now we're kind of in another arena of people really going all out to concerts. So it's actually been going quite well. Most of the places, most of the places, the crowds are great. But you're right. I think it's pretty apparent that we're competing with a lot of other acts and venues and, everyone going out at the same time. When you were talking about Godsmack, I'm like, well, yeah, it makes sense because, some of our routing is very strange because of having to compete with other people that are going at the same venues. So I would say it's not quite like some of our other tours, but it's been great, better than expected, I think.
How's COVID affecting you? I mean, do you have COVID compliant officers, or how do you deal with it?
So far,
I'm dealing with it right now with Joe Perry.
Really? Well, we're going into Canada soon, and we definitely had to present some extra stuff for that. I mean, we had to send all of the COVID cards and everything. But for the most part at the venues, there haven't been many mask mandates or requirements for testing or anything. So it's been pretty open for the most part. And luckily, no one's gotten sick to the point of not being able to perform. So.
We start the Joe Perry rehearsals up in the Boston area soon. And I went to Live Nation and I got them to hook me up with a professional COVID testing facility. Mm-hmm. And you cannot enter the rehearsal unless you have a negative test. And I have a team there. And then everybody that comes in has to be tested daily. Do you have that on tours?
Right now, no. I would say more in the winter tour that we did that was a lot more Live Nation venues. We dealt with that a lot more. So I remember having to do some of the rapid tests, or you had to present your vaccine card. Wow. It was much more difficult, I think, this was 6-7 months ago. Also might be venue things. If they're Live Nation venues, that probably changes a lot too.
Yeah, well, we're dealing with it, but it's quite expensive to actually hire a company because they do it all professionally. Yeah.
I think across the board, everything is more expensive, it seems. Like, the transportation, the drivers, the COVID protocols, everything. I think touring, you have to be in a really good position to be able to manage all of the necessary expenses because everything's just more.
Well, and not only that, because of COVID, all the promoters took such a beating by not being able to play. They're dropping their guarantees about 20% of what you got last time round because they made no money. And so things cost more and you're getting paid less.
Right. And that's the other joke. It's inflation affects everything except, let's just pay musicians less and lower ticket prices. And it's the one area where it seems like everything has gone down rather than up.
And another trend that I'm seeing a lot, which is very upsetting to me, is bands just not bringing a bassist on tour. That's terrible. I've seen so many shows where there's just no bass. They're just like, fuck that guy.
Well, wow. I saw you on a video a little while ago where you were playing an outdoor festival. You were already getting into it. What was that?
Yeah. I was opening for Trace Adkins with a group that I play with from time to time. Yeah. It wasn't a tour or anything. It was just a one-off. But it was fun.
I saw you. Well, you know what? In response to what you were saying about people just not having bass players, I have to tell you a story. When I was tour managing Kiss, they used to have an Offstage keyboard player. His name's Gary Corbett. Unfortunately, Gary was also part of Cinderella, actually. And he unfortunately passed away a few months ago. But we were on a tour. I think it was the Hot in the Shade tour. And the ticket sales weren't great. So cuts had to be made. And so there was a meeting, and Gene and Paul and I was there. And they were working, what can we cut? Keep the train rolling. And the idea was, we could record the keyboard player's parts. This is before everything was digital. Tape everything that he does and fire him. And then just play his parts through the PA. And they said, that's a great idea. That's exactly what they did.
And then everyone followed suit on everything.
Yeah, they just taped him and he played his parts. There's lots of stories about Kiss and money, and they're probably all true, actually. But it still was wonderful memories for me. Oh gosh.
But touring has been interesting. I mean, another story that's coming back to the driver thing. We're touring with a band called Red, which you guys might know. I love their music; they're great. But I think it might be the bass player that's actually driving the bus also. So he's playing the show. Yeah, he has the license, and so
that's how he's justifying his job. He's like, "No, guys, I'll drive too. It's fine."
Yeah. Oh no, I don't know how he does it. Yeah. I don't know how he does it, but it's just funny to see them rolling in, and it's one of the guys in the band driving the bus.
Well, these days, I will tell you, if you are a multifaceted crew person these days, your worth is really much higher than if you just do one thing. So if you're a tour manager that has knowledge of accounting as well, then you can do that. That saves an extra person, and you charge a bit more, but so that, or sound engineers that can do production. That's another one that's very popular. I've seen tour managers that are production managers and tour accountants. They're doing all three. It's out there. The work is out there.
For us, it's front of house and tour management is combined in one person. So I think that's pretty common as well.
Yeah, and I've seen sound engineers run monitors as well, which I don't know how that works, but they do, So when do you go back out on the road again, Siobhán? When are you playing again?
Oh, we're playing tomorrow. I mean, we've been on one sort of long tour, but it was broken up into a support tour and then a headline. So the first month we were supporting Seether and Breaking Benjamin. So those were bigger venues like arenas and amphitheaters. And then now we're doing sort of House of Blues type venues, different levels of capacity as a headline. And we've got 3 support acts that go before us. So we're going until middle of July.
Middle of July. And did Mike Plotnikoff work with you? Have I got that right? Did he Mike Plotnikoff, the engineer, did he work with you?
I'm not sure. With Starset, maybe. I'm not sure.
Who produced your records?
Some of them were self-produced. Dustin produced, I think, I would have to ask him to make sure. But he worked with Rob Graves, I know, who produced, I believe, the first 2. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not really sure. I don't want to speak with 100% confidence. But he's worked with a number of different people, and some of it has been self-produced.
Well, I got some news for you guys.
Okay.
Marty Friedman called me.
Oh, he did?
Friend. Yes, he did.
I love Marty.
Marty?
Tell us about Marty.
How can you not? We've been friends for years, Marty and I. And even, after Mega, we kept in touch. And every time I go to Japan, we go for dinner. And so Marty calls me up and he goes, dude, I don't know why, but he always does that whenever it's dude. He said, listen, COVID's coming to an end and I want to get back out there. I want to make up for lost time. And I have a manager in Japan. So I'm all good there because he has his own life in Japan. He's on TV. He plays at the Budokan with the Tokyo Philharmonic supporting him. He's got it going on. He's recognized in the streets. And he says, I want to go back and tour the world. He says, I don't have a manager. So he said, what are you doing?
Oh, shit.
And so we got to talking. And
no way.
I would love nothing more. Yeah. So I'm going to do this with Marty. And I immediately contacted an agent I need an agent who's in the trenches, right? And so we immediately came up with this idea, like G3. And so the idea first of all, was Paul Gilbert, Marty Friedman, and John Five.
I like that lineup.
Wow.
So
that's scarier than G3 to me.
Well, yeah, it's a limited appeal, but there is a market for the shredding,
Yeah, it's a bunch of dudes like me and Cory wearing Maiden shirts going, Paul is unbelievable, but Marty does cooler things with the way he plays. But they're both great.
Yeah, the shredding, Lost Symphony is all about that. I mean, that's what
I know. That's why my mom listens to us.
So Paul Gilbert, he was the first person that his manager called me up and he's all about it. But then a couple of days later, Paul Gilbert, I don't know, had cold feet. So Alex Skolnick is now in the frame. Okay? And I know, that's why I'm telling you.
I talked to Alex today. I think I know where this is going, but I'll let you finish because I did speak to Mr. Skolnick because we're friends.
That's where it's going. I mean, this is now, we are holding buildings. And we're, I'm sure Boston's going to be on the list. We're putting this together.
Hell yeah.
And I told Marty, I'll get him the publicist and we'll make this happen. And for the shredders that want to see this, it's going to be a wonderful night.
Wait a minute, we should make them play Lost Symphony now because now they have acknowledged each other's existence because they're in the same room. In fact, Alex told me that he's going to play, and tell me if I'm wrong, Rock in Rio with Metal Allegiance, which That's is, right. I believe, what you're speaking about, correct?
That's a different thing. That's nothing to what I'm talking.
Is it going to be with Marty Friedman too? Because I know Marty played in Metal Allegiance at one point.
Yes, but this is a different thing altogether. This is basically me handling Marty, putting together a tour.
Wow.
Of 3 guitar players. And then, while all that's going on, David Ellefson, have you heard this? Have you heard from David recently?
Well, actually,
Not
I
really.
just broke a
He seems
story
to have resurfaced,
online. I saw him at NAMM, and he told me that he's now back in the saddle with Mr. Jeff Young from So Far, So Good, So What. And that he's even been jamming a little bit with Jimmy DeGrasso, who used to play with Alice Cooper, but also played with Al Pitrelli in Megadeth back in the day when they released Dread and the Fugitive.
I managed that era and many eras for Megadeth. But
so, Steve, the only people on the internet that know this went on to Metal Injection and Blabbermouth when they shared my story because I happened to be, we know this, we're friends with David Ellefson. He was in Lost Symphony. I ran into him at NAMM and I was like, hey man, you want to talk? And he's like, yeah. And then he just lets loose. So Jeff was playing me, and by Jeff I mean Jeff Young, some stuff that was supposed to be on the next album, Rust in Peace, but he didn't end up staying in the band. He goes, I remember those songs, and now we're doing them. Years later.
Yeah.
Yes.
David's happy. David thinks it's, it'll probably upset Mustaine, which I think he gets some joy out of. But,
as he might and should.
The ever complicated story.
Yeah. Also, Dave Mustaine's wife got in touch with me the other day because I haven't spoken to her in years. And she called me up and she said, hey, I'm in the Lake District in England. And do you know anybody that could hook me up that knows anything about falconry? What?
What a random
Falconry's
thing
like
to
when
call.
you have a big glove and a friggin' great hawk on there. And I go, oh yeah, I got, how many people? No, I don't know anybody. No.
Was Bruce Dickinson not available that day, or is he too busy jousting?
It's funny. I brought it up because we're talking about these Megadeth things, and but the Marty thing is exciting to me.
So wait, is it John?
It's exciting. It's exciting to me as well.
Wait, is it John 5, Marty, and Skolnick?
That was the discussion we were talking about because Paul Gilbert was the original idea.
Because those are 3 of the scariest guitarists on the planet. Like literally, because I've seen John 5 and he's one of those guys. First off, very small, dainty hands for a guy that plays. Like when I shook his hand, I'm like, wow, you have like little girl hands. And meanwhile, he's playing like 6 octaves on the guitar. But he's the scariest. And not even just because he wears a mask. The scariest player as far as like can chicken pick, can play Van Halen. Like he is terrifyingly good. He's the guy that when we were doing Lost Symphony, I used to always say, well, if there's anybody who's going to come in and be, because like for me, Bumblefoot is the savant, like Rain Man. Like he sat there. I understand the Phrygian. Like that's Bumblefoot. So I saw Skolnick play with Bumblefoot on the Les Paul documentary we're doing, and Skolnick has a master's in jazz, and even him, he was like. It was so great watching him play against the machine. It was like the chess master against the artificial intelligence that thinks it's sentient is Bumblefoot because those guys are so tremendous. John 5 could do it. Marty would just, as David Ellison told me, would just bend into it. So he'd fuck it up, but then bend it like it was right. Because that's the thing that makes that's his superpower, is he can bend anything until it's right.
Well, I saw something the other day which blew me away on guitar playing. I listened to that guy on YouTube. He's got like 2 million followers that talks about music all the time. What's his name? I've gone completely blank.
Leffitz?
Oh, I
Bob
think
Leffitz?
I know.
Gray hair, brush back in Atlanta.
Rick
Beato?
Beato.
Rick Beato.
Yeah.
He's the greatest.
I think it was Ron Thal. How do you pronounce it? Thal? Ron
Yeah, that's
Thal,
Bumblefoot.
Yeah, Bumblefoot. That's Bumblefoot.
Bumblefoot, yeah. Playing a fretless guitar?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Back
It's
in Black.
insane. Yeah.
Perfectly.
Yeah, it's
Well, come
incredible.
on,
So let's set this up.
impossible.
So let's set this up. So basically, Rick Beato, it has these incredible things where he reimagined the Stairway to Heaven solo. So he called up Phil X. He called up Phil X, who's playing with Bon Jovi, and then Bumblefoot was the secret guest because Rick Beato is one of the few guys that agrees with me in the sense that he blatantly acknowledges that Bumblefoot is the end-all, be-all, craziest guitarist. He says it constantly. What would you do if you reimagined the Back in Black solo, which is perfectly simple?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah, I watched it.
But the funny part is that Phil X and Rick both play solos that are very deviant from the original. Whereas Bumblefoot goes and plays on the fretless guitar, but it's the closest thing to embodying Angus Young, which is why Bumblefoot reigns supreme for me, because how could you make Angus Young sound like Angus Young on a fretless guitar?
That's right. Exactly. I didn't care for the other two versions, actually. It didn't work for me because the actual AC/DC one is so sacred.
Yeah, how can you?
Perfect.
You can't not hear those notes. So we'll put a link. We're going to put a link to that video in the description, so make sure you check it out below. And actually, we are coming to the end of our first hour, Steve.
No!
We are flying.
Yes, no, I have so many questions for the second part. It's too good.
Rick Beato, actually. He calls me sometime.
Wait, you're friends with him?
Okay.
All right, well, we'll talk about it in part 2.
We're going to talk about that in part 2. All right. So Steve,
Save the
thank you.
stories.
Thank you for hanging with us. We're gonna be back next week with part 2. 2020-d.com. Like and subscribe to the podcast and stay tuned. I was going to ask, have you busted out the trumpet at all on any of these records?
I tried. Okay, on the first solo record, there was a part on a song called Devil on the Wall, and I heard like this kind of mariachi band part, and I was like, you know what, let's rent me a trumpet, because my little brother took my trumpet years ago and lost it, so I don't know where my trumpet is anymore. But basically, it was kind of like, and there's footage of it online somewhere of me trying to play, like I'm wearing this like a pork pie hat, and it's the first time I tried to play in like decades. And my embouchure, with trumpet players, you develop your embouchure, and it's like a muscle, and completely non-existent. And it's pretty funny, actually. You should hear how bad I am. So I think Elvis, my producer, was like, he heard me in there rehearsing, because I was like, "Hey Elvis, trust me, I'm gonna get my embouchure back." So yeah, just go for it.
Meanwhile, he's programming it in MIDI after.
That's what happened. In fact, I think we just cut the part. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So.